The chipped mug sat heavy in my hand, its warmth doing little to thaw the chill that had settled deep in my bones. 3 years. 3 years of this. My eyes scanned the familiar worn furniture of our rented apartment, each scuff and faded patch a testament to a life lived on the very edge. Or so I thought. Mark was asleep in the next room. His soft snores a stark contrast to the gnawing anxiety in my gut. He'd been broke since the day we moved in together. Not just tight but truly profoundly broke. Every meal was a calculation, every bill a silent negotiation with fate. Forget vacations, new clothes, or even a decent night out. It was always, "Babe, you know how things are right now. We just need to ride this out." And I believed him. I worked extra shifts, juggled 2 part-time jobs, and even started selling some of my old belongings online, all to keep us afloat. I'd given up so much, sacrificed so many dreams, all for us. For the future we were supposedly building. Just last week, I'd found myself staring at a tiny tear in my favorite winter coat. It was the only one I had. Instead of getting it fixed, I'd patched it with a piece of duct tape from the kitchen drawer. Mark had watched, a sympathetic frown on his face. "Soon, babe, soon," he'd promised, pulling me into a hug that felt more like a cage than comfort. He always had a way of making me feel guilty for even thinking about our financial struggles, as if I was somehow unsupportive. But something had shifted lately. A tiny, insidious whisper in the back of my mind. Little things. A new, expensive-looking watch on his wrist that he quickly hid under his sleeve when I walked into the room. A nervous twitch in his eye when I asked about an unexpected charge on our shared utility bill. And the way he'd started taking his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. He'd always been so open, so transparent. Or had he? Tonight, the whisper was a scream. I'd found a crumpled receipt in his jeans pocket earlier, while doing laundry. It was for a high-end restaurant, a place way out of our league. The date on it was from last Tuesday, a night he'd claimed he was working late at a gig that paid cash. My hands trembled as I smoothed out the paper, the elegant script of the restaurant's logo mocking me. This wasn't just a random receipt. This was a crack in the carefully constructed facade of our lives. The receipt was a cold stone in my stomach. I clutched it, my gaze fixed on Mark's sleeping form. The gentle rise and fall of his chest, the innocent curl of his lips. It was a performance, wasn't it? Every shared meal, every whispered reassurance, every worn-out excuse. My mind raced, piecing together fragments I dismissed as paranoia. The way he always turned his phone screen away from me, the hushed conversations he'd take outside, the sudden business meetings that stretched late into the night. I felt a surge of something hot and sharp. Not just anger, but a profound sense of betrayal that twisted my gut. I knew, with a terrible certainty, that this wasn't just a simple slip-up. This was a deliberate deception, meticulously maintained. My eyes fell on his phone, lying face down on the bedside table. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. I'd never snooped before. Never felt the need. Trust was the bedrock of our relationship. But now, that bedrock had crumbled into dust. My hand trembled as I reached for it, the cool metal a stark contrast to the burning in my cheeks. He used a simple 4-digit PIN, one I knew by heart, our anniversary. A cruel irony. The screen lit up, a blinding portal to a reality I wasn't prepared for. My finger hovered over his banking app, the logo a familiar icon of our shared poverty. But then my gaze snagged on something else. An app one didn't recognize. A generic-looking icon, almost deliberately bland, tucked away in a folder labeled Utilities. My breath caught. Why would he hide a utility app? Curiosity, a desperate, clawing beast, pushed my thumb to tap it. It opened to a login screen. Not a utility company. This looked like another bank. My fingers, almost independently, typed in the same anniversary PIN. Clicked open. And there it was. A balance that made my head spin. 5 figures. Thousands. More money than I'd seen in years. More than we'd ever collectively possessed. My eyes scanned the transactions. luxury hotel stays, high-end electronics, designer clothes, and recurring transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Names I didn't know. My vision blurred. This wasn't just broke. This was an elaborate, cruel charade. He wasn't struggling, he was thriving. And he was doing it right under my nose, while I patched my coat with duct tape and skipped meals. Then, a notification popped up at the top of the screen. New message. From Sarah. My heart plummeted to my feet. A picture accompanied the message. A selfie of Mark, smiling. His arm around a woman with bright, sparkling eyes and a smile that radiated genuine happiness. They were sitting at a table, clearly at the same high-end restaurant from the receipt. Her hand, adorned with a delicate, unfamiliar ring, rested casually on his arm. The air left my lungs in a ragged gasp. Girlfriend. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering softly onto the carpet. Sarah. A name, a face, a life he was living that I knew nothing about. My breath hitched, a painful knot forming in my throat. Every "I'm broke" excuse, every "we can't afford it" sigh, every weary hug. It was all a lie. A meticulously crafted lie, designed to keep me in the dark, to keep me small, while he built a secret empire with someone else. The images flashed through my mind. Mark carefully counting out loose change for groceries, Mark lamenting about the cost of a broken pipe, Mark telling me, with a mournful look in his eyes, that a simple coffee date was too much right now. And all the while he was showering Sarah with luxury, living a life of ease and indulgence. The humiliation burned, a hot, acrid taste in my mouth. I wasn't just broke, I was a fool. A naive, trusting fool. My gaze drifted back to him, still peacefully asleep, oblivious. How could someone look you in the eye, share your bed, and systematically dismantle your life while living a lavish secret one? The love I'd felt, the trust I'd so freely given, curdled into a bitter cocktail of disgust and rage. I knew, with a chilling clarity, that there was no coming back from this. No explanation, no apology, no desperate plea could mend what had been so thoroughly shattered. The foundation of our relationship wasn't just cracked. It was pulverized. My mind, usually chaotic in moments of crisis, became eerily calm. I stood up, moving silently, deliberately. My old worn backpack, the one I used for work, sat by the door. I began to pack. Not everything, just the essentials. My passport, my wallet, a few changes of clothes, the small box of cherished letters from my grandmother. Each item I placed inside felt like severing another tie to this suffocating illusion. I caught my reflection in the dark window. My eyes, usually bright, were hollow, haunted. But beneath the pain, a flicker of something new began to ignite, a steely resolve. This wasn't just about leaving him. This was about reclaiming myself. Reclaiming the years I'd poured into his lie. Reclaiming the dreams I'd put on hold. As the first light of dawn began to paint the sky a faint gray, I zipped up my bag. The apartment was still, the only sound Mark's quiet breathing. My hand hovered over the doorknob, a final tremor running through me. Every instinct screamed to confront him, to unleash the fury boiling inside me. To scream, to demand answers, to watch his carefully constructed world crumble before my eyes. But what good would it do? He'd lie again. He'd twist. He'd make me feel like I was the crazy one. I wasn't going to give him that power. Not anymore. My gaze flickered one last time to his sleeping figure. The rage was still there, but it was mixed now with a profound, aching sadness for the person I thought I knew, for the future I thought we shared. It was gone. All of it. With a deep, shaky breath, I turned the knob. The click was surprisingly loud in the quiet apartment, a final, definitive sound. I pulled the door open, stepped out into the hallway, and gently, silently, closed it behind me. No slam, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet, resolute departure. The cool morning air hit me, a crisp slap of reality. The street was still largely empty, the world slowly waking up. I walked without looking back, my backpack feeling both heavy and liberating on my shoulders. Each step was an act of defiance, a move towards a future I hadn't planned, but one that was finally truly mine. I found a small cafe a few blocks away, its lights just flickering on. The aroma of fresh coffee was a welcome comfort, a small anchor in the swirling chaos of my mind. I ordered a black coffee, something I hadn't indulged in for months, deeming it an unnecessary luxury. The warmth of the mug in my hands was different this time. Not a substitute for missing comfort, but a symbol of a choice I was now free to make. I pulled out my phone, my fingers still trembling slightly, and went to our shared bank account. With a few taps, I transferred my half of what little savings we had left to my own newly opened account. It was a paltry sum, a stark reminder of the financial bind he'd kept me in, but it was mine. And then I blocked his number. And Sarah's. Every connection severed. The sun began to rise higher, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. I watched it, sipping my coffee, feeling the tears finally prick at my eyes. They weren't just tears of pain or anger, but also of relief. The weight was gone. The weight of scarcity, the weight of deception, the weight of being a pawn in someone else's elaborate game. I didn't know what came next. I had no plan, no place to go immediately. But as the first rays of sunlight warmed my face, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was free. And that, after 3 years of living a lie, was enough to start. The sunrise painted the sky in hues of defiant orange and hopeful pink, mirroring the chaotic mix of emotions swirling inside me. Each sip of coffee was a conscious act of reclaiming something small, something I denied myself for so long. The little cafe, still half asleep, felt like a sanctuary. I watched people trickle in, a hurried businessman, a student with a stack of books, an elderly couple holding hands. They all had their stories, their lives unfolding, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was an active participant in my own, not a ghost haunting someone else's. My phone, now silent from Mark's end, vibrated with a message from my sister, Clara. Morning. Coffee soon. Need to vent about my bossel. Pang hit me. I hadn't told Clara much about the extent of our financial struggles, always putting on a brave face, always protecting Mark's dignity. Now, the urge to spill everything, to unburden myself, was overwhelming. But first I needed a plan. I pulled out my worn notebook and a pen, the tools of my pre-Mark life, when dreams felt tangible. What now? I had a few $100s, a backpack, and a fierce, burning desire to never be fooled again. My old apartment lease had expired months ago, swallowed by Mark's need for us to save money by moving into his cheaper place. I couldn't go back there. My mind raced. A friend from college, Sarah, a different Sarah, thank goodness, lived a few states away. We'd talked vaguely about me visiting sometime. Maybe now was that time. A small town, a quiet place, away from the suffocating memories of Varzea Polista. It wouldn't be easy, but at least it would be a clean slate. I'd need to find a new job, a new everything. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach, but it was quickly overshadowed by a growing sense of empowerment. I was making choices again. My choices. I finished my coffee, the last drop a bitter reminder of the past, a sweet promise of the future. As I stood up to leave, my eyes fell on a job board near the cafe's entrance. A small handwritten sign caught my attention. Help wanted, local bookstore. Tiny spark. Books had always been my escape, my solace. It was a long shot, but what did I have to lose? With a deep breath, I stepped out of the cafe, the morning sun now bright and warm on my face. The world hadn't stopped spinning. It had just reset, and I was finally in control of my own orbit. The air in Varzea Polista felt different now, lighter somehow, even as my pockets felt emptier. I walked toward the bus stop, the address of Sarah's, my friend, not that Sarah, apartment pulled up on my phone. My old life, the one tethered to Mark's lies, felt miles away, even though I was still in the same city. Every street sign, every familiar storefront, now seemed to mock the blindness I'd lived with. As I waited, a flicker of movement caught my eye. Across the street, near the entrance of a bustling bank, a familiar figure emerged. My heart seized. It was Mark. He was on his phone, laughing, a smile stretching across his face, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. He looked relaxed, unburdened, not a trace of the struggling man I'd shared my life with. Beside him, her hand casually linked through his arm, was her Sarah, the girlfriend. She was even prettier in person, with a genuine warmth in her smile that made my stomach churn. She leaned into him, whispering something that made him laugh harder. They looked utterly, sickeningly content. A surge of nausea washed over me. This wasn't just a secret account. It was a secret life. A parallel existence where he was the successful, happy man I'd always longed for him to be, but with someone else. The rage I'd felt earlier, a hot, fiery inferno, now cooled into a chilling, hollow ache. He hadn't just pretended to be broke. He'd pretended to love me while building a future with another woman. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculated cruelty, took my breath away. I instinctively ducked behind a large, leafy tree, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't want them to see me. Not like this. Not broken and alone, while they were basking in their shared deception. The bus pulled up then, a screech of brakes breaking the trance. I practically ran onto it, finding a seat by the window and pressing my forehead against the cool glass. As the bus pulled away, I risked a glance back. Mark and Sarah were still there, laughing, completely oblivious to the shattered life they'd left behind. A single tear escaped, tracing a hot path down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness for what I'd lost, but a tear of release. A final farewell to the ghost of a relationship that had never truly existed. This raw, public display had, ironically, given me the final push I needed. There was no going back, no room for doubt. Only forward. The bus ride felt endless, each kilometer a physical separation from the nightmare I'd escaped. When I finally stepped off in Sarah's town, the air felt cleaner, the sky wider. Sarah, my real friend Sarah, was waiting at the small station. Her familiar smile a beacon of genuine warmth. Her hug was fierce, unasked for, but exactly what I needed. "Hey, you made it!" she exclaimed, pulling back to look at me, her brow furrowing slightly. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I managed a weak smile. Something like that. I hadn't told her everything, just that I needed a break, a change of scenery. The shame of my situation, the raw wound of betrayal, was still too fresh to articulate. Her apartment was small but cozy, filled with plants and books. A stark contrast to the sterile, broke existence Mark and I had maintained. She made me a cup of tea, and as I sat on her comfortable, slightly lumpy couch, the dam finally broke. The words tumbled out, a torrent of 3 years of suppressed fears, anxieties, and ultimately, the crushing discovery. I told her about the chipped mug, the duct-taped coat, the constant gnawing worry. I told her about the hidden bank account, the staggering sums, and the endless list of luxury purchases. And then I told her about Sarah. That Sarah, and the picture, the ring, the sickening display of their happiness. Sarah listened, her expression shifting from concern to shock to a quiet, simmering anger. She didn't interrupt, just occasionally squeezed my hand or offered a soft, "Oh my God." When I finally finished, exhausted and raw, the silence in the room was heavy, punctuated only by my ragged breathing. I can't believe it," she whispered, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. 3 years. He let you live like that. While he was doing that. She shook her head, tears welling in her own eyes. "He's a monster." Her immediate belief, her righteous anger on my behalf, was a balm to my bruised soul. It confirmed that I wasn't crazy, that my feelings were valid. She didn't ask, "Are you sure?" Or "Did you misunderstand?" She simply understood the depth of the betrayal. "You can stay here as long as you need," she said, her voice firm. "We'll figure this out. You're safe now." And in that moment, for the first time since I'd found the receipt, I truly felt it. The next few days were a blur of nervous energy and the surprising comfort of routine. Sarah, true to her word, became my unwavering anchor. She helped me set up a temporary bank account, the one I'd transferred my meager savings into, and insisted on driving me around to local businesses. The job board at the cafe, it turned out, was a genuine lead. The small bookstore, the chapter nook, smelled of old paper and new possibilities. The owner, a kind, bespectacled woman named Elena, listened patiently as I stumbled through an explanation of needing a fresh start. I didn't go into the painful details of Mark's deception, simply stating that my previous living situation had ended abruptly and I was looking for stability. Elena, sensing more than I said, simply nodded. She gave me a trial shift on the spot. Working among books felt like coming home. The quiet rustle of pages, the hushed conversations of customers, the sheer volume of stories waiting to be discovered. It was a soothing balm to my still frayed nerves. It wasn't glamorous, and the pay was modest, but it was honest work. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of purpose that wasn't tied to someone else's pretense. Evenings were spent on Sarah's couch, sometimes talking for hours, sometimes just existing in comfortable silence. We cooked simple meals, watched old movies, and slowly, painstakingly, I started to feel like myself again. The constant knot of anxiety in my stomach began to loosen, replaced by a quiet hum of resilience. I still had moments of overwhelming sadness, of a burning anger that would flare up unexpectedly. I'd replay scenes in my head, dissecting every word, every gesture, searching for the signs I'd missed. The humiliation was a persistent shadow, but with each passing day, it shrank a little more. One evening, as Sarah was watering her plants, she looked at me thoughtfully. "You know," she began, "you really should tell your sister. Clara, right? She'd want to know." Flinch. Clara. My fiercely protective older sister. I'd avoided her calls, texting only brief, non-committal updates. The thought of telling her, of admitting the extent of my naivete, filled me with dread. But Sarah was right. Secrecy had been Mark's weapon, and I was done living in the shadows. The time for quiet healing was giving way to the need for complete honesty. The phone felt like a lead weight in my hand, its vibrations a prelude to the storm I knew was coming. After a week of procrastinating, urged on by Sarah's gentle but firm nudges, I finally called Clara, my sister, my rock, my fiercest defender. The thought of telling her what I'd allowed myself to endure, the shame of being so thoroughly deceived, made my stomach clench. "Hey, stranger!" Clara's voice boomed, immediately injecting a much-needed dose of normalcy into my chaotic world. "Everything okay? You've been quiet." "Hey, Clara," I started, my voice barely a whisper. "No, not really. I left Mark." A beat of stunned silence. Then, what happened? Are you okay? Where are you? Her questions came in a rapid-fire succession, laced with immediate concern. "I'm with Sarah, my friend from college." "I'm okay," I reassured her, taking a shaky breath. "But, it's a long story. A really bad one." And then I told her. Every humiliating detail. The 3 years of pretending to be broke, the constant sacrifices, the duct-taped coat. I recounted finding the hidden account, the tens of thousands of dollars, the luxury expenses. My voice cracked as I described the notification from Sarah, the photo, the sickening realization that he had a whole other life, a whole other girlfriend, while I was living in manufactured poverty. I even recounted seeing them together just a few days ago, laughing, oblivious. The phone was silent for a long moment when I finished, a silence far more terrifying than Clara's usual explosive reactions. I braced myself for judgment, for the inevitable. "I told you so." But when she spoke, her voice was low, trembling with a fury I rarely heard. That bastard," she seethed, the word dripping with venom. "I never liked him. I knew something was off. But this is beyond anything I could have imagined." Tears streamed down my face, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of her unwavering support. There was no blame, no "how could you be so stupid?" Just raw, protective anger. "Are you safe? Do you have money?" "I'm coming to get you," she declared, her voice firming with resolve. "I don't care where you are. I'll be there by tomorrow. No, Clara, it's okay. Sarah's been amazing, and I just got a job at a bookstore here. I quickly interjected, trying to stem her tide of furious intervention. I just needed you to know. I couldn't carry it alone anymore. You never have to carry anything alone, she said, her voice softening, but the steel was still there. Not ever. We'll figure this out. And when I say we, I mean we. He won't get away with this. The conversation ended with a promise of a visit soon and a fierce commitment to helping me rebuild. Hanging up the phone, a different kind of strength settled within me. The last remaining shard of my secret pain had been exposed to the light, and instead of crumbling, the weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that felt both unfamiliar and incredibly comforting. The chapter nook became more than just a job. It became a sanctuary. Elena, the owner, was a quiet mentor, her gentle wisdom a stark contrast to the chaotic energy of my previous life. I learned the precise art of shelving books, the hushed reverence of a first edition, and the simple joy of recommending the perfect story to a customer. The modest salary, combined with what little I'd saved, was enough. Enough for my small, rented room just a few blocks from Sarah's apartment. Enough for groceries. Enough to start feeling a sense of self-sufficiency. Sarah continued to be my rock. Our evenings were filled with shared meals, laughter, and sometimes, just comfortable silence. We explored the quiet charm of her town, discovering hidden cafes and scenic walking trails. Each new discovery felt like a step further away from the suffocating confines of my past. My emotional wounds, though still tender, began to scab over. The obsessive replays of Mark's deceit lessened, replaced by thoughts of future possibilities. Clara, true to her word, visited. Her arrival was a whirlwind of fierce hugs and a stern, appraising look at my new life. She scrutinized my room, questioned my budget, and even gave Elena a suspicious once-over. But beneath the protective bluster, I felt her immense love and relief. We spent hours talking, reliving the past 3 years from a new perspective, piecing together the subtle clues I'd missed. Her anger remained, a simmering undercurrent, but it was directed solely at Mark, never at me. He stole 3 years of your life, she declared, her jaw tight. But he didn't break you. Look at you. You're building something new. I started a small savings account, a tangible symbol of my renewed control. Every few days I'd transfer a small amount, watching the numbers slowly grow. It was a stark contrast to the vast, hidden wealth Mark had hoarded. My money was earned honestly, transparently, and it represented my freedom. I still thought about Mark, of course. Not with longing, but with a detached curiosity about the man who could orchestrate such a cruel deception. I hadn't heard from him. No furious calls, no desperate texts. It seemed he had simply moved on, seamlessly slipping into his other life. And in a way, that silence was its own form of closure. It confirmed that I was truly, irrevocably out. One sunny afternoon, I walked by a small boutique. A beautiful winter coat, soft and warm, hung in the window. My old duct-taped coat was still in my bag, a lingering reminder. Paused, then walked inside. It wasn't about the coat itself, but about the choice. The freedom to walk in, to try it on, to consider a purchase without the gnawing anxiety of scarcity or the weight of a lie. I tried it on. Fit perfectly. And for the first time in a long time I bought something simply because it made me feel good, not because it was a necessity or a compromise. It wasn't just a coat. It was a testament. A quiet victory in a battle I hadn't known I was fighting. The journey was far from over, but the road ahead, though uncertain, was entirely my own.